In 2024, it's difficult sometimes to know who's really true, telling truth, speaking truth, and on the right track, and who to follow versus those who are controlled opposition. This is why it's so important to be able to look back at history and find reference points, because those reference points then allow us to not make the same mistakes. The problem is that the powers that be typically try to change, transform, or wipe history altogether so that we don't have those reference points, because let's be honest, history typically repeats itself in some form or fashion. So if we're going to understand right now in 2024 in the landscape of things politically, or from the standpoint of the media or those big names that we continue to see, whether it be in the mainstream media or the alternative media who we look to, why are these people in those positions of power, and how do they stay there even in the midst of the things that they say and the things that they stand up for? So to better understand that, let's quickly look through the 60s era, specifically during the hippie movement. So during the hippie movement, you had people moving into this little spot in California called Laurel Canyon. You had a number of people like Frank Zappa, you had Papa John Phillips, you had Joni Mitchell, you had Mama Cass, you had Jim Morrison, you had a number of people moving into this place. There was one guy in particular named Vito Polacas who was the leader, who was coined as the first hippie. And this guy came out of nowhere. He was in his late 50s, and a lot of people believe that he was actually installed by the intelligence communities to go in there and to set the tone and be influential for these younger kids who were looking for something to follow. The war had just kicked off in Vietnam. Jim Morrison's dad, George Morrison, had actually been on the ship and was the naval admiral for the ship that actually incited the Gulf of Tonkin, which the Gulf of Tonkin incident led to the full-scale Vietnam War. Yet here his son, as controlled opposition, who never went to a show, never played an instrument, never was in a band, all of a sudden emerged on the scene after being this recluse and really collegiate, clean-cut guy as this full-on rock star icon. And when he showed up in this little place in California, the guy already had 2 albums worth of music with a full-scale band. So it didn't quite make sense. And then all these other names, Frank Zappa, Papa John Phillips, you name all these other people, even Gail Zappa, Frank's wife. They all came from intelligence and high-level military families who were very much intertwined in high society and in the intelligence components of what were happening at that time. Our own president at the time, JFK, who was opposing and wanting to dismantle a number of the intelligence communities, he wanted to remove the Federal Reserve and go back to a gold standard. So what did they do? They assassinated him. A guy by the name of Lee Harvey Oswald, who then a guy named Jack Ruby went and killed him. And before Jack Ruby was actually able to testify during his second trial, they had this doctor pop up from Southern California by the name of Jolly West, who went in, gave him what people think was LSD. The guy went bonkers and was never able to testify or tell any of his story. This guy, Jolly West, was also the doctor who was seeing on a consistent basis Charles Manson. We know about Charles Manson, who established the cult, the family, committed mass murder. That was made possible by LSD, which was still not really a widely known drug at that point yet, except for in the MK Ultra programs, Midnight Climax, and some of the others that followed that. And then these same people that were living in that same area, these rock stars, these icons, were all intertwined in these intel communities, and these were the voices of the generation that were speaking out against war and opposing it. Their families are intertwined in the intel communities fighting these wars. Why weren't there other names who were the icons of those places that were organically grown from within that movement? Why was it these people specifically whose family members were the heads of these intel communities and military complex communities? So it makes you believe that these were controlled opposition tactics, controlled operatives that were installed specifically to speak to a generation and dismantle this grassroots movement that was rising. It was led to discredit it. People started looking at hippies like they were these crazed lunatic maniacs that would kill you. People didn't want to pick up hitchhikers anymore. People believed that they were all strung out on LSD. And it all rooted from these target operatives who were installed to carry out a specific mission and purpose. So let's fast forward now to 2024. And I want you to think about people who we have in the media, whether they're in the mainstream or alternative media. And I'm not making anybody a specific target, but I want you to think about this. And maybe if those people hear this and watch this video, they could respond, and maybe we can even dialogue and have a conversation specific to this because the people would like to know. I look at the alternative media, who is said to have family roots and ties to the intel communities, the CIA, etc., and the various other families who are married into people who are from the House of Lords, people who are married into high Jewish lifestyle, etc., and prestige and prominence there, and all those other aspects. Where do these people come from, and why are these the voices that have been chosen to lead and to run the show? Why are they leading our movement that is opposed to the government? We don't believe in getting involved in other people's wars and funding other countries for their wars and their problems and the things that they have going on when there's real problems here at home. And the taxpayers who are paying their taxes should be the ones that this money is invested back into in our economy to build us and strengthen us and make us better. So these people who are the alternative sources, who have ties within the military-industrial complex and the intelligence communities, are the ones suddenly leading us? Are they controlled opposition? Were they purposely installed to make people look like crazed lunatics and conspiracy theorists, which was the term that was made up anyway back in the JFK era for those who had dissent or who questioned the JFK assassination? And by the way, why was Jack Ruby silenced before he could speak out and say what was really going on? Why are people like Julian Assange behind bars decaying instead of being in the limelight and holding some show or big thing that he can speak out on a platform where he can tell people the truth? But yet you have people who are in these outlets speaking the things that they do, who weren't put in jail, who might have faced a court trial, but have they really paid anything, or will they ever pay anything? Was all of this staged and put together? Because how is it, after doing what they've done, have they not been touched? Something about this maybe just doesn't make sense to a lot of people, and there's some questions that we want answers to. And again, I'm not pointing the finger at anybody or discrediting anybody, but what I am saying is, can you please provide us some answers and dialogue with us so we can get a better understanding and know that this isn't some type of controlled opposition tactic, and finally put that argument that is starting to rise to rest? Let me know what you think about this. Drop your comments down below. Subscribe to my channel. And as always, continue to fight the PSYOPs.
Hey, I want to say thank you for watching this show and for supporting us here at Fight the PSYOPs. We can't do what we do without your support. As an independent alternative media outlet, your support means the world to us. Listen, down below you can donate 3 different ways: PayPal, Cash App, or by credit card. Whichever is most convenient for you. It's fully secure. You can also pick up some merch, the ebook or audiobook, or you can even purchase the emergency wellness kits to protect you and your family from our partner, the Wellness Company. Do it right now if you believe in the fight for free speech and to advance the truth movement. Support us.